What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Z League YouTube channel. I've got Nick with me here again today, as always. And today we're going to take a little bit of a look at the top cut for the 2025 World Championships that we run here on the server. We have just wrapped up Swiss. This year's format was slightly different than last year, or I guess is going to be slightly different than last year. We had a simultaneous standard event and tough enough event ran, and last year each of those events had their own top cut, and then the winner of those two went to face each other in the finals. But in this league, half of the events in the year are standard, half of the events are tough enough, so both of them are like equally weighted. So we thought it was only fair that like a world champion caliber player should be good at both formats, where like last year you could go 0-5 in one, 5-0 in the other, and then win your finals game. And that be enough to carry you, and that didn't feel quite right. So this year we did the standard event and the tough enough event, but then the top cut here is a combined, your record from the two events is combined together to give you a full overall out of 10 rounds record. So I'm just going to let Nick kind of take over from here with our first announcement of the first game, and we'll just kind of start breaking them down.
So one thing I wanted to go over real quick is a breakdown for the styles for Worlds. Of course, with 8 finalists here, we have 16 different decks. We ended up on 4 freestyle decks and 4 blue decks, which were the most represented. We had 3 red style decks, 2 sand decks, and then 1 of each orange, Namekian, and black. Kind of seeing only 1 black is very interesting. Most people, I think, consider black to be the best style. So pretty interesting there's only 1 black deck. But you know, sometimes it's like that. We jump on into the first game. It is the 1 seed who is on a red Trunk Saga Future Trunks deck, and then in standard, and then a blue Tough Enough Kid Boo, Evil Boo type deck in Tough Enough. He'll be playing the 8 seed who's on a double Saiyan deck. He's on Saiyan Young again in standard and Future Gohan in Tough Enough. This matchup's pretty interesting, mainly because this matchup actually just happened in round 5 in both formats. So these two decks were played against each other in round 5 in both formats, and you can guess based on seeding who won those two matchups. So the 1 seed did win both the standard and the tough enough matchups in Swiss. I do think that they are likely favored again. The Young against standard deck just doesn't have the ways to keep up with either the ball or the MPPV that the Future Trunks deck offers. The Future Trunks deck, you know, they call it a triple victory deck. It's not a triple victory deck. It does not win by survival. It is an MPPV or a Dragon Ball deck, and it's very good at both of those things. I do think the tough enough matchup's a little more evenly matched, but the Boo deck was able to kind of do Boo things and jump ahead and have a couple of combats where they did a lot of beatdown, and I do kind of expect that to happen again. If it comes to it for the third game, we're doing the third game based on the power level from the season. The 1 seed has a higher power level than the 8 seed, so they would get to decide the game 3. So I do definitely like the 1 seed's chances of moving on here. Derek, what do you think about this matchup?
Well, I mean, like you said, we did just see it, so it's the likelihood of it being a straight, repeat is very possible. I do think that the Goku Trunks match is definitely less favored. The Future Gohan one, though, I do think that there's plenty of play there. If Future Gohan gets to do any of the solid stage locking type stuff that it is capable of doing, I think that there's always room for potential there. And then Nick, you mentioned that the winner or the higher point value if you go into game 3 gets to decide the third game, and if that's the case, that would go to this 1 seed here, obviously. But there is also the one time in this event that overkills matter. And overkills are pretty hard against Boo, because Boo has a lot of power level. But if you can get Boo to 0, Saiyan does have a couple of cards that can output a pretty hefty amount of damage. So it's possible that Gohan could pull an overkill out of his butt and get to call the third game, and then maybe claim a second tough enough round. I don't know. I think this is going to be interesting to see, especially because they did just play. It'll be interesting to see if the 8th seed player is able to carry any of that recent lesson into their next game.
Very, very good point you make on the overkill. The Saiyan deck, it does have a lot less of the stage locking decks. The stage locking things. You're not going to see the jeering drills and whatnot in this deck.
True.
But what it can do, like you said, is get Boo to 0 and then throw a dashing kick or a cross punch, which can get that overkill. So that is definitely the route that this deck wants to go in that matchup, I think. He struggled to get off level 1, which is obviously not where you want to be in the first game. So if he got an early, couple of anger to bounce up to level 2 and 3 where Gohan is very good, it could be a much different matchup. And definitely getting an overkill is going to be priority when he's probably going to want to play a third tough enough match, assuming that we get there. All right, we'll move into the second match, the 2nd seed against the 7th seed. I'll turn it over to Derek to lead on this one.
All right. So in our first match here, we've got Blue Boo in our standard slot, and then excuse me. Actually, is that a Blue Boo deck?
No, it is black.
It's
I believe.
a black
It
Boo
is a
deck.
black Trunk Saga Boo deck. Yep.
Yep, my brain got confused with the color of the letters. It is Black Trunk Saga Boo, and then Orange MBS 19. 7th seed here we have Vegeta. This is your kind of classic freestyle Vegeta deck. And then Gohan is the Tough Enough deck, and this is a kind of more recent specialized brew that uses Otherworld to get a ton of allies in and out of play pretty repeatedly, and just try to kind of accomplish the same kind of ally beatdown that you'd get in other decks, but with a really interesting way to keep repeating that cycle. This match, I think, is an interesting one. As we saw through Standard, no offense to the Vegeta player, I played Vegeta myself in Standard. Both the player playing that deck and myself don't actually think that deck is particularly strong. It did well enough to carry him, into top cut, so it can't be that bad. But it definitely has its work cut out for it, and we know for sure that Black Trunk Saga Boo is great. That's one of the iconic good decks of the game, right? So I think that's going to be a tough match. That said, Vegeta does, if he gets to line it up, he does have plenty of ways to put a huge chunk of cards back at a time, which in theory can keep him in the game well into stages he shouldn't be still playing. But it's gonna really depend on if he's able to pull that kind of thing off. The issue that the Vegeta player ran into through Swiss was that discard pile hate is at an all-time high. So it's really hard to keep Vegeta cards in your discard pile to put back into your deck. So we'll see if that matters there. And Tough Enough, we've got the premier Orange MBS player in our league at this point, still playing their best Orange MBS deck. That deck is fantastic. But the ally deck with Gohan, that deck also is really explosive in ways that a lot of other decks don't have the ability to do. It can just pull 14 allies out of its butt out of nowhere and just start hitting you with them. If that kind of thing happens, if the Gohan player is able to enter on a turn where the MBS deck draws 2-3 drills or something, it might just be game. So I think it'll be interesting to see. Nick, what do you think?
I definitely agree with where you're at on the Standard matchup. The Vegeta Freestyle deck, for all the cards we've given it, including last year's World card, which is absurdly strong, it's just not where we want it to be yet. The deck's power level is just not quite high enough. Black Trunk Saga Boo, like you said, classic beatdown monster deck. I really hate that matchup for Vegeta. I think he's in a lot of trouble. The Tough Enough matchup, like you said, is a lot more interesting. The 19 deck will have Gohan spots the Imposter Drill, which is probably his key to the matchup. I don't know if Cell's presence is lurking around or not, but I do know that if they lock in Gohan spots the Imposter Drill, Freestyle is going to have a rough time getting rid of it. They can deeds it or something like that, but then you can just use your Orange MBS Mastery to put it right back into play. So that's going to be the big fight in this matchup, I think, is whether or not Gohan spots the Imposter Drill stays on the table. If it does, 19's going to win this pretty easily. If it doesn't, or Gohan's able to set up a turn where it's not in play and he can unleash I think he's got a good shot. As far as power levels go, the 2 seed is the slight power level. They actually finished 2 and 3 on the season, so 2 of the better players for the season for sure. But the 2 seed will have the advantage, so the Gohan will need to get a tough enough overkill if he wants to place tough enough in round 3. Although it's possible that the 2 seed decides that they want to play, tough enough. I'm not sure. I know that, like you said, the Orange MBS deck is his pet deck. It's his baby deck, and he may just feel more confident going into the final game with that deck. So you could really see it either way.
I was going to say that, actually. I'm glad you brought it up. It's very likely that the 19 player would pick 19 again, which I think is the better matchup for Gohan, or for the Gohan player. So time will tell if that game goes to a game 3, and if it does, what will come of it.
All right, let's move on to the third matchup here. We got the 3 seed, who is on Blue Krillin in both Standard and Tough Enough, and the 6 seed, who is on Blue Tamagami in Standard, and Red MBS Goku in Tough Enough. So this matchup, I think, is a lot more interesting than a couple of the previous 2 matchups that maybe don't have as clear a winner. The Standard and Tough Enough Krillin deck are basically the same deck. They're pretty close to the same deck. They are non-combat heavy. They want to set up a bunch of drills and then play a big PUR matters finisher. So they want to set up Oops Energy Drill. They want to play some cards that boost their PUR, and they're going to play a control shell and try to hit you with 2 big attacks the whole game. That is 100% the game plan. That's the goal. That's what they want to do. The Tamagami deck is a lot more varied and interesting. It being blue means that it's going to have access to Betrayal and Kamehameha Blast and Miss Kicks and all of the cards that really go well into non-combat decks. Plus, it's going to have the Dende deck strategy, which, as long as it keeps some energy blocks to block the big focused energies from the Krillin deck, should be able to protect their balls. I actually kind of like Tamagami in the matchup. I think that he is I don't know that he's a huge favorite. I think he's a slight favorite in this matchup. When you move to the Red Goku deck versus the Krillin deck, I like this deck a lot less. I think that there's definitely some questions about the overall power level of the deck. It does some interesting things, but most of the things it does can be negated by the Tough Enough deck, by the Krillin deck, and I don't know that they're going to have enough focused energy blocks to be able to stop the turns that Krillin comes in and just blasts them. With that said, the 3 seed does have the tiebreaker, so if it does go to Game 3, they will get to pick which format their Game 3 is in. I'm unsure what he will pick. I imagine he'll just pick whatever format he won the first game in. That would be my guess, but I don't know that for sure. Derek, what do you think about this matchup?
So I think that's pretty spot on for me. I think it's really going to come down to, in both games, this Krillin deck, it is kind of, it is your standard sort of stall control kind of shell, but it has the really interesting build-up combo that it's working towards, where it, like Nick said, 2 times a game, it's going to be energy for 57, and if that connects, a lot of decks just die. So it's really going to come down to, that's going to happen 2 times or so a game. And if the Tamagami Goku player has the out when they need it, they'll get through it. If not, I don't know. Especially with the Goku deck, that deck, every level in the stack draws cards. It's just that deck's going to be burning through cards in its deck faster than some other decks may be on their own. So eating, an attack for 50 life cards is just even more dangerous for that deck than some others. But I think that the Goku deck still does have some play of its own. The making everything focused is a cool effect. The getting to use the various Goku levels, getting to because he's running the Super Saiyan 4 level, which will let him pick different levels too, so you can draw additional cards and kind of extend the turns out, which is not something a red deck typically gets to do. So you might get some undue damage in there that you wouldn't have normally been able to push through. In that case, that might give him enough of a lead to kind of come out on top. I've seen this Krillin deck win and lose both by the skin of its teeth. A couple cards left in deck. I've seen it also have 35 left in deck and hit you for 50 and you lose. So I think it's really up in the air on this one, more so than I think some of the other games. I think this one's going to be really interesting to watch. It's one of the ones I'm looking forward to the most.
Okay, so before we get to the 4-5 game, because most people know 4-5 games are generally toss-up games, give me an upset from the first 3 games. The 8 seed, 7 seed, or 6 seed. What do you think is the most likely to pull off an upset here?
That's a good question. I think the Tamagami deck has a good shot. I think the Goku deck isn't out. So I think that's a reasonable. Like if you had to bet on one of these 3 games with the underdog winning, I might pick that one. The Vegeta Gohan match, I'm also a little bit tempted to vote on. I mean, its opponents are like, here's the 2 pillars of strong in this game. So like it's a scary matchup, but the Vegeta deck does, when it hits, it does a lot. If you get to pull off the Big Bang attacks and the Vegeta's lurkings into like huge hands, like sometimes that's just enough to just kill somebody with it. So it's possible that could take it. And then the Gohan deck too, it has so much protection for its allies. It has so much ability to just, all my allies are gone. All 15 of them are back again, just in an instant. So it's like it gets to play Z Warriors Gather like 12 times a game. So I don't know. That one's really going to be like high rolly. I think if that player can win the internal coin flips on each of its moments that matter, I think it's got a shot. But I guess if I had to pick one, I'd say 6 seed.
I think that's pretty good analysis there. I think that the 6 seed is probably the best shot to pull off the upset. I think 7 is live, and I like 8's chances a little bit less, and maybe that's because it's just fresh on my mind from watching him lose the 2 games previously this week, but I do think that all of them stand to be pretty interesting matchups. So
I think the fact that 1-8 just played is cool. I think there's a lot of fresh in your mind things to remember when playing that game, like things that you just faced and errors you felt like you made the last time you played, you may not make now. So I think that's going to be an interesting game to watch. I think the head games in that one will be really cool.
Interesting to note too, they are also buddies and playtest partners, so these are probably not decks they're super unfamiliar with. So
that's true.
All right, moving on to the last game here. We got our 4-5 seed. This one I think is the most interesting of the bunch. We got Freestyle Videl and Namekian Cell against Freestyle Goku and Orange Oob. So standard-wise, Freestyle Videl against Freestyle Goku. The Freestyle Goku deck is the Goku Free Ball deck. It's pretty popular. It's been popular since the game was live. It is a Dende Dragon Ball deck that uses Goku's Dragon Ball quest to get a bunch of Dragon Balls out. The Videl deck does not have a lot of good ways to capture Dragon Balls, but what it does have is a lot of focused attacks. So focused attacks are generally very strong into Freestyle. So I think the Videl deck can put a lot of pressure on Goku and try to use the focused attacks to catch 1 ball, maybe 2 balls, and then just try to put pressure on him to end the game. I also note that Goku is a South Kai Sensei deck, which means there's going to be an ally in play early, which means Videl's power is going to be online for +2 life cards, so any generic energy attack is capable of capturing Dragon Balls at that point, which is great. So I actually really like the Videl matchup, the Videl deck in this matchup, but I think this is as close to a 50-50 standard game as we have, and definitely the closest that we have in this format. As far as Tough Enough goes, Cell and Oob. Cell is a Namekian Cell Saga. It's kind of a hybrid deck. It's mostly a physical beats deck, but it plays Rage in the 8 package to gain anger in order to level, to get to use like the better levels of Cell's level 2, which is a great searcher, and then it's 3 through 5, which are big attacks. And of course, the Oob deck, Oob does one thing, it gets to level 3, and then it hits you with energy attacks for 20, where all the damage is RFG and you can't use endurance, right? So Oob's ability to prevent the Namekian deck from using endurance is going to be huge here. I think that Oob is the best thing you can play against Namekian, which is going to be a weird spot for the Cell deck to be in. Cell's going to need to keep Lonely Canyon and things like that off the battlefield and try to keep Oob at 0 or close to 0. This may actually be a matchup where Cell doesn't want to level. Maybe he wants to stay on level 1 where he can throw multiple physical attacks and try to keep Oob down to 0, because if Oob gets to level 3 and he has stages, he's just going to rain down on Cell, and it'll be a short game from there. What do you think?
Well, I was on Namekian Piccolo, slightly different deck. Well, much different deck, really, than the Namekian Cell deck. But still, like, general core concept, because the playstyle of Namekian is generally the same, where it's just, like, get endurance, get cards back in your deck, etc. And I just lost to that Oob deck in the final round of Swiss, and I can tell you from first-hand experience that that is a super brutal matchup for Namekian. So I do think that that's going to be a rough spot to line up. However, like Nick said, the Cell deck does have, as a physical deck, it does have some great ways to push damage. It also has better than average ways of getting rid of the Battlegrounds locations that you have in play. So getting Lonely Canyon off the table, more possible in a Cell deck than some others. So we'll see how that goes. The idea of staying on level 1 is definitely not the angle that deck is like built to do. But Nick is right that it might be the answer. Getting Oob to just be able to throw those energies might just be the out. I did see that when I fought that deck, I ran into next to no blocks. It was just kind of like gas, 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 gas. And it's possible that he just like whiffed on all the blocks, whatever. But it might be one of the lesser block-filled decks this player has used. They are historically block-heavy in our league, this player, so it was surprising to see such a small amount of them, but with Oob doing the amount of damage it does with the stuff that you set on the table, it makes sense that you would just want 3 cards a turn to be like 12, 15, 12. Like, that's huge. That's so much damage. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. If Cell can get to level 2 and fetch like the appropriate cards each turn too, that's going to be really clutch. That's going to be an interesting game to see. As far as Videl and Goku, yeah, Videl is a really interesting deck. I'm so glad that made the top cut. I think that's one of the coolest decks in Worlds, and especially I think it's like coolest deck in the top cut here. It's such an interesting departure from like our standard stuff that we see event after event, so that's really cool. The Goku Freeball deck, on the other hand, is, like Nick said, a certified classic. That deck's been around forever. It is 68 or something-ish cards. It's not a full deck, but it's not quite like a Speedball 50-card like minimum package thing. Videl might be able to take advantage of the slightly smaller deck size there and get through that. However, as we know, with every Freestyle Goku deck, there's Goku's flights out the ass and stuff like that, so it's a hard deck to punch through, but you might be able to get there. This is, like Mick said, probably the closest pair of matches in the event. I don't know who I like in this spot. I think that I like Videl over Goku, but I like Oob over Cell. So I think it's going to really come down to just draws and timing. I mean, got broken record there. That's just sort of how score the card game is, right? A lot of the time it's just who gets to draw the nuts a little faster. But in these games, I think it's really going to be exemplified. The Oob deck is really cool, and the amount of damage it can shell out is awesome, and its ability to just say, not only that you can't use your endurance and stuff, but that you just don't get a discard pile, so you don't get any of the good transform stuff. Namekian just got a great transform block in the last NZ set, You won't have access to that. You won't have access to Namekian Finger Blast, which is also great. It's going to be tough, but Cell, as we've seen time after time, has the ability to put up numbers, and I don't know, I think it's still possible.
Definitely agree. This matchup in particular, I think the overkill rule is more likely to come into play than any of the others. Oob turning off endurance and then doing huge attacks means it's setting up an overkill is much easier for Oob than a lot of other decks. So if there's any matchup where the 4 seed here actually has more power level, but man, if Oob wins this, there's a very good chance it's with an overkill, and it might even be worth if he loses game 1 to take the gas off a little bit to try to set up the overkill to pick this matchup again in game 2, because I do think it's a pretty solid favorite in game 2. So it'll be real interesting to see how that plays out. As far as the rest of the tournament goes, I'll go ahead and say I think that the 1 seed should be the favorite. I believe that the 1 seed is the favorite to win the event. I hate to be the boring, take chalk guy, but I actually could see a 1 seed, 2 seed finals as the most likely scenario, in my opinion. I think that would be an interesting matchup. I think Black Trunk Saga would probably struggle a little bit with the MPPV part of the red Future Trunks deck, and then the tough enough matchups would be a little more even with the 19 versus Boo. But I actually really like the Red Trunk Saga deck in this format. I don't think a lot of these decks are going to be able to handle it.
I agree.
I think that for example, if the Goku Oob Dex wins, I don't think Goku Freestyle can beat the Red Trunk Saga Future Trunks deck, because it is also on Dende Balls. So I don't like its chances at all. Vidal's got a slightly better chance, but I think the 1 seed sets up pretty well to be in the finals, and then I think the 2 seed gets there based on the power level of the Orange MBS and Black Trunk Saga Boo strategies. What do you think?
I agree with that entirely. I think that the 1 seed is super set up to do really, really well. That Trunks deck is so cool. And the Boo deck is, we know is a classic great deck. The 2 seed also, though, is 2 powerhouses. Dude has been playing them every event since he joined, so like it's not new to him to run those decks. It's going to be, if that's the match it comes down to, it's going to be a doozy to watch. I think it'll be really cool. That said, there's something that would be neat if Seed 1 wins and they win Worlds a second time and get to have like a second Worlds card that they designed. There have been 2 so far. If the 3rd card is designed by the same person who designed the first one, that's going to be pretty fun.
Sure.
I think, personally, if I had to put money down to protect my mortgage or something, I'd probably pick the 1 seed. But if I had to bet with money that didn't matter and I was just in it for the high risk, high reward, I think the 4 seed is the coolest pair of decks in the event. I would love to see that one take it, but I think the 1 seed is probably the safest bet personally. The 4 is the coolest. I think that like Gohan Vegeta, I think is probably paired to be one of the decks I wouldn't put money down on. I think the Vegeta deck is just too weak of a link in that pair. The Gohan deck is fantastically cool, but I think the Vegeta deck is just like the odd man out in this 16 deck suite here. I think it's one of the standout kind of weak decks of the pool. This Goku Oob package though is good too. That Oob deck is crazy, and Free Ball has been good for 20 years, so it's possible that just pulls it off. I think the top cut's pretty interesting. I really do. I don't think there's anything that is like a full wash. Like, oh, I think this is just going to go south completely. No chance for any of the pair-ups in the initial top 8. As you get into top 4, top 2, some of those matchups, I think, get way worse. If we get an upset in like the top 8 into top 4, I think some of those pairs get worse, but I think it's still going to be interesting all the way up to watch.
I I do as well. Definitely looking forward to it. So, after Worlds kind of wraps up, the next thing on, the Z League agenda is the release of NZ9. With that said, we're going to go ahead and release what would be my spoiler card for NZ9, which is Terrible Trio. So Terrible Trio is a combat card. It is Dodoria only. If you're unaware, the theme for NZ9 is going to be, helping some of the crappier personalities. Some of the spoilers have already started on the main league, including Home for Infinite Losers, which is kind of the tagline of the set, and it's kind of the, what we're looking to do here is to help out the bad personalities. So what this is it's a combat card. It's Dodoria only. So search your life deck or discard pile for a level 1 Zarbon and Frieza ally and place them into play at 3 above 0. For the remainder of combat, your personality powers on Dodoria, Zarbon, and Frieza are unstoppable, and your Zarbon and Frieza allies do not need to be in control of combat to use their powers and constant powers. Okay, so what does this really mean? First thing, it means that you're going to put Zarbon level 1 and Frieza the Master, which is an ultra rare that sees basically 0 play, into your deck. One of the things that we've been talking about for a while, especially myself and Derek, is how to get some of these ultra rares that, are iconic, but not actually any good, into card sleeves. And this is one of our routes to do that with Frieza the Master. I chose this spoiler specifically because growing up, Frieza the Master was my chase card. It was the card I always wanted. I know everybody's big into Goku, but I was a villain guy. So I loved Frieza the Master. It's the card I always wanted. I now have one. I now have a reason to put it in a deck, and I'm super excited about it. What this card does in a playing perspective, searching for the 2 allies, that's fine, nothing wrong with that. But their powers being unstoppable. First off, Dodoria's power on level 1 is a physical that stops all energies, so that's not bad. His level 2 power is just an energy attack, making that unstoppable is fine. Zarbon and Frieza both have energy attacking powers. Something that's worth mentioning, Zarbon's power is also all of your attacks gain if successful, gain some stages and raise your anchor 1. So you can have that power working no matter who's attacking for the rest of combat when you play this. That's pretty powerful. So all of your attacks are going to get that during this turn, and their attacks are going to be unstoppable. So at the very least, no added effects. You can get 12 life cards, or you can get 10 life cards out of Zarbon and Frieza's power and nothing else. But you're on Dodoria level 2, make that 14. You're on Dodoria level 3. Well, his level 3 is that all your attacks do +2 life cards and +1 power stage. So now, because he doesn't have to be in control of combat, you can actually use Frieza the Master to do an energy for 6, and it will get buffed by Dodoria. It will also get the effects from Zarbon's power. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with this. It sets up kind of a big combo damage turn, and the fact that it can get it from discard pile or deck means that as long as they're not removed from the game, you're always going to have access to these 2 when you play it. Even if you do this and one of them's gone and you only get 1, this is a combat card that says, energy attack, this attack is unstoppable. Like, people are already playing that. That's already good enough. So as long as you don't lose both allies, this card's going to maintain its value. I'm really hoping that this kind of gives you a reason to play Dodoria. I think Dodoria's got an interesting stack. Doesn't really play well together, but it is an interesting stack. And I think that this is going to breathe some fresh light into Dodoria as a personality. And, of course, put Frieza the Master on the table, which is something I really want to do.
I think that one of the coolest things about Dodoria is the level 1 power. It's a physical attack, and then if successful, stops all energies, right? In this meta that we've kind of shaped with the NZ sets that we've released and kind of keep pushing, energy decks are better than they've ever been. There are more of them at any given time than there have ever been before. So being able to stop all energy attacks is really cool. Having it be attached to an if successful on like just a base physical sucks, though. But now, if you have Terrible Trio, which also bought you a Frieza and Zarbon, who also do stuff, but even if you just ignore that part, you now can just have an unstoppable, so always successful, Dodoria energy stop all every turn that you play Terrible Trio. So I think that alone is like a really interesting thing. Dodoria is one of those MPs, like Nick said, where the stack itself doesn't play super well together, but each level is kind of cool. And then that level 1 especially is almost a good enough power. Like, Dodoria is just dude and B or whatever, so it's hard to justify that. But, like, every time that power would connect, is going to feel great, especially in the meta that's shaped in the NZ era of this game. Having that on a stick feels great. Having it stopped feels awful. So making it unstoppable is just really interesting. This card has been super cool to use and to see used. It's made an ultra rare go from like gimmick ninth ally in your villain ally deck into like your premier first choice ally, and I think that's really cool. You can also get like a little bit weird with it if you wanted to be like safe. You could play a second Frieza in your deck, so that if you lose one, like if it does get RFG'd or something, you have another out, and then you've got like you could do the Frieza level 1 that was released in NZ Set 2. That power is cool, and then has the ability to clear stuff off the table and things like that. So I think that that's like an interesting like oh shit button that you could have if you needed it to be. But I think most of the time you're probably just going to be on like, I'm going to play Zarbon, I'm going to play the Master, I'm going to play 3 of this, and that's going to be my little suite of stuff. But if you wanted to protect your investment just a little bit more, there are other Friezas you can pick, which does up the juice of this just a little bit and gives you a slightly larger toolbox of interesting stuff you can do.
Including the Trunk Saga Frieza that just adds some extra damage to the attacks. Could be relevant sometimes. Well, that pretty much wraps up what we wanted to talk about today. We wanted to kind of go over Worlds. I did want to mention a little bit that 2026 is right around the corner. We're planning on firing off the first event here, either the 4th or the 11th. I don't think we have a set start date yet, but that'll be coming soon. Derek will be making an announcement, I'm sure. We're also, of course, running some side events on Octagon, so, it's a good way to get involved in the game if you haven't yet. We're hoping, more of you come out this year, and, running 22, 24-person events has been great. We want to keep that up, so we definitely want you guys to, maybe you're watching a YouTube video and you haven't actually played in a while. Just come out and engage, man. There's plenty of people here who are willing to get games in with you and teach you the game, and maybe next year we'll be talking about your deck list at Worlds.
Yeah, like Nick said, we're right into the last throes of the 2025 season. As always, we'll wrap it up with like a player feedback survey that we'll release in the next couple weeks here, where we kind of want to know what you guys thought of the year, what we can do better, what we did great, etc. So we'll have one of those, and then as opposed to waiting until like end of January, early February like we did this year, we're just going to go right into firing right away in January, so we can try to fit as many solid events into the year as possible. We'll have a schedule for you guys in the very near future too, so keep an eye out on announcements for that. But for now, let's wrap up Worlds and see who we crown champion.
All right.